Hey there guys, what's going on? Tyler here with your movie fix, and today I want to talk about Bryan Singer's X-Men Days of Future Past. With Apocalypse hitting theaters tonight, I'm actually going in just a couple hours. I thought what a better time to talk about one of my favorite X-Men films, Days of Future Past, than now. Starring many familiar faces from both new and old X-Men franchises, the X-Men send Wolverine into the past as a last-ditch effort to stop an event that would mean the end for both humans and mutants. This movie, guys, this movie. I can remember the first trailer back when they dropped it in late 2013. They had the crazy music going on from Sunshine and the Thin Red Line. I love that trailer. I love it so much. I think it's probably the second best comic book movie trailer I've ever seen. And it still gives me chills to this day. I watched it before doing this review again after I just watched the movie. I just love that trailer so much. It gets me every time. And I saw this film 3 times in theaters with a bunch of friends, and probably altogether I've seen this movie about 7 or 8 times, so it is something I feel pretty passionate about. There really is just so much to love about this film. Not only is it a great X-Men movie, but I think it's a really good sci-fi movie. It's probably one of my favorites that I own. I thought that it was a really fresh way to introduce some of the time travel aspects without it being some sort of magic or some sort of weird dream or sending somebody back in a time machine. No, we had something that we got to use a character and a mutation. We got to use Kitty Pryde as a vehicle to send Wolverine back in time. I know previously in the X-Men movies, they've never really shown anything that would indicate that Kitty Pryde can do anything like that. And you gotta remember, probably only 1, and I'm being generous here, 1 to 2% of the general audience has ever read an X-Men comic or know really anything about these characters. So most people aren't really gonna give a shit if Kitty Pryde can send somebody's consciousness back in time. So, you know, she's a mutant. They evolve. She could have a latent mutant gene that also activates when she's older. Whatever. They didn't need to explain it. It was fine. I thought it was a really fresh way with everything that was going on with Bishop. And speaking of Bishop, this movie had me hooked from the very beginning with all those future X-Men fights going on with the Sentinels. You got Bishop, Sunspot, Warpath, Iceman, everything going on there. That really was a great opening. Tons of awesome action. I remember seeing it in the trailer and freaking out, how is this going to play out? And I think it played out awesomely. Really, all of the action in this film I thought came out pretty well, with especially the Pentagon breakout with Quicksilver. Absolutely love Evan Peters as Quicksilver. What they were able to do with the slow-mo cams or the high frame cameras, and that song of choice that they had with Time in a Bottle. So perfect. I remember seeing that in theaters and everyone was losing their minds. That whole scene with him breaking Magneto out was so hilarious. Such a great, character. And I'm glad that we're going to be seeing him in there. And all of the future X-Men fights were great. Everything going on with Storm and Magneto trying to protect Charles and Kitty that were in there with Wolverine. That all worked for me. And probably one of my favorite action scenes and fight scene in this movie was the conflict that happened between Beast and Magneto in Paris. I absolutely love that. I'm not sure why. It just really stands out to me, especially when Magneto basically crucifies Beast up there in the fountain. Everybody's looking at him like this monster. They're scared of him, and he's just looking at everyone's faces, their reactions, and he gets angry and he runs away. For whatever reason, that moment just gives me chills. I thought it was one of the greater moments with Hank McCoy, and it's something it really resonates. I don't know why. Also, can we appreciate Hugh Jackman and those damn snakes for veins? I mean, seriously, how does this guy get bigger, more ripped, and more jacked each time he plays Wolverine? If you ever looked at him in the first X-Men film, if you look at Logan in there, and then you look at Logan in Days of Future Past, such a world of difference. It's crazy. But yeah, I just wanted to appreciate Hugh Jackman's gains for just a second. Now, all of the awesome action aside, what really carries this film for me are all the great character moments between Eric, Charles, Logan, Hank, and Raven. Now, James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, and Hugh Jackman, I think, all gave these standout performances in this movie, and I can think of 2 scenes specifically that really drive everything home for me. The first one being the conversation on the airplane between Charles and Eric. Oh, man, so great. Where were you, Charles? Where were you when your people needed you? I love that. That was really a great moment because it kind of put Charles back in check. That, maybe Eric has a point. He's not totally wrong. He may be doing things the wrong way, but he has an ultimate mission that's better for our people. And the performances that James and Michael were able to give in that scene specifically were both just really, really powerful, and I hope we get to see more of that carried over into Apocalypse. And the second scene that really does it for me is with Logan and Charles after Cerebro explodes, and he's kind of helping Charles to find his way. He's saying, look into my head. I know there's a lot of pain in there, there's a lot of suffering, look past that, look for the good. And he basically looks into the future, he goes through Logan's consciousness, into the future timeline and he's speaking with future Charles. It was really great to see both versions of Charles interacting with each other, Patrick Stewart and James McAvoy. I think they played off each other really great, and it was just a very powerful moment for Charles. And I also want to talk about Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique. Now, I have no issues with her in this film. I like the way that she was used, and I have my trepidations with what's going on in Apocalypse, but I'm reserving judgment. But I think that this was a great redemption story for both Charles and Raven. I think she played her well, and she was the most conflicted of all the characters in this movie, but I still can't say that she's the villain of this film. I do want to see Mystique as a villain again, but I don't think she was the villain. You can't really say that Boulevard Trask was the villain, or even Stryker or the Sentinels, and that's what I think is the really strong point of this movie. Now, this film was driven by a problem. They needed to prevent the humans from ever wanting to go to war against the mutants. They needed to prevent them from hating them. They're trying to prevent this whole anti-mutant movement that we got to see in X-Men 1, 2, and 3. And this was really just to correct everything and put everyone on the right path again, even though we still leave with Mystique up in the air with who she is, where she's going to go, but we don't kill Boulevard Trask. And the humans are okay with the mutants for now. But I would much rather see these characters fight against a problem, against a movement, rather than a person, because ultimately they're just fighting for a better future. And speaking of the future, that ending of the film with Logan waking up, he's back in the X-Mansion, everything's going on, we see Rogue, we see Beast, we see Colossus and Kitty again, and we even get to see Jean. I remember seeing that in theaters with everybody. I went with all the X-Men fans that night. Seeing Jean was a treat. But when they showed Scott Summers again, we got to see Cyclops. Everyone lost their minds because he was the character that I wanted to see come back. We didn't see anything in trailers. I don't remember hearing any rumors or anything about James Marsden returning as Scott Summers again. So getting to see him on screen just filled me with joy. I remember everybody losing their minds seeing that. That was great, and I hope we get to see him somehow later in the films, but I'm glad we got Ty Sheridan playing Cyclops now in Apocalypse, and I can't wait to see what he does. But I think it was a great way to tie everything together to make up for some of the past mistakes of the franchise and really get things back on the right track. Now, I want to talk about the actual ending to this movie, with Mystique being the one that's Stryker and she takes Wolverine out of the water. Now, for a while, I just thought, okay, what the hell are they doing with this? And Simon Kinberg, the writer of the film, he actually kind of made some comments about a week or two ago, and he said that, you know, in the movie, when they talk about how time is it's a flowing river, it's a stream, you can create ripples, but ultimately things are going to go back and find where they're supposed to be, that kind of thing. So we have Mystique was the one that took him out of the water, but somehow, one way or another, off screen, Logan ends up back in the hands of the actual Stryker and goes through the Weapon X program. It's probably never going to be explained. I'm sure it's not explained in Apocalypse. And it just seemed like it was kind of done for shock value, like, oh, what's going on with Mystique? And they are never going to follow up with that. It was pointless. They should have just not done that. I wasn't a big fan of that, but I don't really have any big issues with the film. That ending wasn't an issue at the time, so I can't say it's a real problem. But, you know, just nitpicky things. I think everyone had great performances, except for the guy who played Stryker. I think he played him great throughout the film, except for one time. I think he had one god-awful delivery when he's talking with Boulevard Trask, and he's like, you really hate mutants, don't you, Doctor? Just, oh god, I cringe every time I see that scene. But other than that, I don't really have any problems. Great action, great characters, great story, and the music is phenomenal. So with all that said, I'm going to give X-Men Days of Future Past a 9.6 out of 10. So have you seen Days of Future Past? What did you think of it? And are you excited for X-Men Apocalypse? Now, before I go, I do want to briefly talk about the Rogue Cut. I do have the Rogue Cut of the film. I've seen this one 2 or 3 times. And there's a couple of things that make it different enough from the theatrical cut. I think the theatrical cut is a very lean meat piece of the movie. It's the lean cut of the film, has no fat. Everything's great, but I think the Rogue Cut is really the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. You get a couple of things that I think would have benefited to be in the theatrical cut, and everything with Rogue, I understand why they took it out, and that's fine. I enjoy both versions of the film, but I probably lean more towards the theatrical, just barely. Both are enjoyable, both are different enough. There's a couple of key scenes that are very different, such as breaking Rogue out of the X-Mansion in the future. They need her to replace Kitty. She's been hurt. You can have her take her powers, you take over and have Wolverine in the past. That was all fine. You have the big breakout with Magneto and Bobby. Bobby actually dies there rescuing her instead of at the end of the movie when he's protecting Charles. So little things like that. And one thing I would have loved to have seen stay in the movie, there was a scene where Raven actually breaks into the X-Mansion and she has a conversation with Beast, and things get pretty sexual between them, and I actually kind of like that. Am I wrong for wanting to see more of that with Beast and Mystique? Am I wrong for that? But it was a great scene, and it kind of had a lot of tension between the two of them and hinting back at their old romance. That's something I would have liked, but ultimately, she went there to go and destroy Cerebro so that Charles couldn't find her again, but she ends up meeting with Beast first, and they kind of have their moments. I think that would have been great. Also, very quickly, I remember when they break Rogue out in the future, there's like a Sentinel hand. They fight a Sentinel off of the jet, and there's a destroyed hand that gets stuck on it. And that's actually how all the Sentinels in the future find them again at the end when they're in those mountains in China. They find them again because there's like a tracer in the hand, and that's where all of the massive army of Sentinels come. So it was a nice little explanation, but it didn't need to be in the theatrical cut. Ultimately, everything that was cut from the film was fine being cut. But if you want to get the meat and the potatoes, I suggest you check out the Rogue cut of X-Men, Days of Future Past. So anyways, guys, comment your thoughts down below. What do you think of Days of Future Past? And yeah, again, are you excited for Apocalypse? Can't wait to see it. I know they've been saying some harsh things about it from the critics, but everybody I know and a lot of the fan reactions are pretty good, pretty positive for the movie. I don't give a damn. I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy this. I can't wait to go. I'm actually going tonight. So I'll see you guys later. And if you want more videos like this, be sure to subscribe for more movie news, movie reviews, all that good stuff. I'll see you on the next video.